Hi, this video is about taking more risk, right? It's simply the idea and the fact that people take far less risk than they would logically say they should. And that is bad, right? First of all, I'd like to get at the core underlying thought, which is that taking risk is good, right? And this is true in the sense that, well, I should define first what I mean by risk. At least in this sense, I mean risk to gain, right? It's like a coin flip, like a gamble, right? And that's most of our events throughout our life. To apply to a job is a gamble, certainly. Um, to do anything, you're giving up some amount of your time um, for either a positive result or a negative result, right? And you're entering basically into this game, right? By applying to a job, you are giving up your time. That's the cost of entry. And the potential result is maybe 20% of the time you'll get this job. Okay, was my time worth more? Right, we need to make this calculus, we need to decide. Now, in most of our lives, there's a lot of opportunities. And I find that, certainly in my own life, I don't, or at least I should say, I have in the past often not taken those opportunities. Because it's scary, certainly. Also because I could lose. Right? Things being scary is like, oh, okay, so it's just scary, but it's also just good, right? It's not an infinite good that I'm scared of, right? It's not like there's no downside to a lot of the things we do in life, right? Quitting your job. There's upside, but there is downside, obviously, as well, right? There's a chance that you don't get another job, that you lose your house, that you lose a lot. You're risking so much, yet what you stand to gain, more money, pushing further in your career. And so why would I leave my job? Why would I quit my job, right? I'm taking on that risk of loss. And I want to talk about that a little bit. It comes from my understanding, sort of, or certainly it comes from the idea of loss aversion, an idea Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky first published a paper on. So loss aversion is simply the fact, or more hypothesis, I guess, but it tends to be a fact, that we as human beings do not take 50-50 gambles. We would never take a 50, not to say that we would never, but if we were to imagine a thought experiment, right, where I flip this coin, right, heads, you lose $1,000. Tails, you win X amount of money. Well, what does that X have to be for you to take that gamble, right? For you to risk $1,000. And what Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky found was that that's about $2,000. That X has to be just over $2,000 for you to take that gamble, right? So we need a gain that is twice as large as what we're risking for us to always take that gamble. Now, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Certainly makes sense that we would take those gambles, and yet it doesn't make sense that we wouldn't take, for instance, 60-40 gamble. 60% we win, 40% we lose, right? If I was to offer you, $1,500, should you take that? Right? Of course, that makes sense that most people wouldn't. Rather, I should say, most people would not take that. Yet, sort of like to a super rational, if we're thinking really rationally, it's like that sort of makes sense. But emotionally, and our natural response to that question, would you take $1,500 with a 50% chance of losing $1,000? And the answer would be I would not take that gamble. But I invite you to think about your life. Let me pose one more thought experiment before I get to that. And that is, if I were to offer you this same gamble, right? 50 heads I win, tails you lose, right? Heads you lose $1,000, you give that $1,000 to me. Tails, I give, let's say, $1,500 to you. Now, in a vacuum, people would not take that bet. Why? I'm risking too much for this possible game. I'm okay where I am, right? Then that makes sense. That feels right. But then, what if I was to offer you that same bet, right? I'll give you $1,500. You give me $1,000. If I win. If you win, I'll give you $1,500. And I was to offer you that gamble 10 times in a row. So we're going to flip this coin 10 times. And then you say, of course, I'll take 10 times. The probability of you losing 10 times is minuscule. It's not going to happen. Right? You're going to net more money that way. And so that doesn't logically then make sense, rationally rather. In our very rational mind, when we look at those facts that you would not take, or rather most people, the evidence and the research has found most people, 90%, 99% of people would not take the $1,500, $1,000 bet. Yet if you offered it to them 10 times, they would take it. Right? Rationally, that doesn't make sense. And I think it gives a window of insight into how we view risk and how we view chances. Often we view them, I would say almost primarily, we view them as independent. As independent of anything else. I'm looking only at this, right? Take the example of buying a stock or selling a stock, right? We think about this individual stock. I bought it here, and it's now here. What does that mean, right? Yet, our life is not one chance. Our life is not one flip of a coin. All that exists in front of you is not if I get this job or not, right? I'm applying to 15 jobs. So, of course, then, I would take every single one of those gambles. Because at that point, it makes sense. We're increasing the amount of iterations, which increases the probability of a success. And our lives are like that, right? We take risks over and over again. And yet in a vacuum, when we're faced with an individual decision, we look at it as just this. We don't take the global view as we should, right? And so when you're thinking about risk, when you're thinking about this chance you want to take, you don't want to think about it just as this one chance, just as this one thing, as if this is all that exists. You're going to take 1,000 more chances in your life. If you lose this one, you will win others, right? The only way you can lose all of them is by not taking them. The second point I really want to bring up is a brief one, but it is that we don't actually understand And we can't quantify. There's no way that we could quantify the percentages of the risks we take, right? Going up to this girl in a bar, right? Can't quantify the risk of humiliation versus getting her number versus the other of her just ignoring you, or right. It's not as if I have some understanding of like it's 10% that she'll just ignore me, 20% that I'll get completely embarrassed because she'll yell at me and call me a creep, or 30% that she'll say yes, and what, another 33% or something that or rather 40% that, I don't know, nothing happens. Right, we don't know these. You don't understand it. And so often what we do is we enlarge the fear, or enlarge at least the probability in our mind of negative things happening, right? So we think it's these negative possibilities are more probable than they are. And that comes from them hurting twice as much as gains feel good, right? So even the smallest loss is much larger than the smallest win, right? And to that point, then, if you don't really know, the reality is the probability of good things happening is far higher than you really think. So much more. When you take that risk, the probability of something good happening is a lot higher than you think. And that's just a matter of fact. Now, whether it will happen or not, well, that's not always up to you. What is up to you, though, is if you take that opportunity and you understand that you are making that choice and that you will continue to make other choices like it in the future. And that one loss here does not mean that you will not win again in the future. The last point I'd like to sort of bring up is one that maybe undercuts the whole argument in itself, but it's that pain and joy, rather. These two things that we feel pain twice as much as we feel happiness, of course, right? So my point is that they both don't really matter. Or they don't really exist, for that matter. I mean, if you were to think in a purely biological understanding or biological perspective of the idea of pain and the idea of joy. What do those two ideas mean? What do they represent? Well, pain is telling you that something you're doing feels wrong, does not feel good, right? I guess the easiest example of this is we feel pain when we get a cut. Okay, I got cut. Ooh, that hurts. Ah, this is bad, right? Getting cuts is bad. I cut myself here. I will not cut myself here again because I have been confronted with pain. I touched a stove. It was hot. It burned me. I'm not going to touch the stove while it's on again. That is the most basic explanation of what pain is, right? And it comes to the same with emotional pain. And emotional pain comes in different forms: sorrow, anger. Laughter is actually also a way to cope with this pain. And so when we are sad, when we are angry, all we are being confronted with from our world is that something we did, we don't like. Some part of our body doesn't like it. That doesn't mean it's actually like right or wrong. Quite often, our body tells us this thing is bad, but we, in our conscious mind, know it's not. Right? So if you use your rational mind, pain and joy, not as if they don't matter at all, but they are simply indicators of where your values are, of where your limits are, who your upbringing has made you. Right? About pain, or about happiness, rather. What is that telling you? It's telling you something you did was good. But just like with pain, sometimes the thing we feel happy about is not actually good. And we can know that rationally. I scroll on my phone. It makes me feel happy. Okay, that's not good. Doing drugs makes me feel happy. Well, does that mean I should do it? No, it doesn't mean I should do it. It just means it made me happy. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It just means it made you happy. It just means you had a biological response to it. So, the point being, pain and joy and happiness, they don't really matter. They are simply telling you different things. They are indicators of different things happening. And it is our job to interpret those signs. And if we don't consciously do it, our body will subconsciously do it. Anyway, right? And so you're saying, well, if joy and pain, they don't matter. They're not like the point of our life. What's even happening here? Well, you need something external for you to truly ground any meaning in life. You know, Sartre and Camus talk about how you get to choose your own meaning. And to some extent, that's sort of true. But our minds are not clear interpreters of the world. It's not as if we're taking in all the information and rationally understanding it. It's not how it works. We take in information and we see it through our lens of experience. And so when you ask, well, what's the meaning? What's the purpose? How do I live right? How do I live well? Truly, simply to do good, I think, is all we can do, right? It's all that, if you don't believe in, truly right and wrong are something reserved for those who believe in an external God or an external universe or being or thing or idea or logos, right? That can tell us what is right and wrong. So we don't really understand. We can't really understand. But at least in my view, our purpose is to help push our world forward in some way, in the way in which we were, created to do, but in the way in which we can, to help the world in the way in which we can, the way in which we feel suited to. we feel our upbringing has led us to, or that we feel is natural to us. That's all you have to do. That's all you can do. When you think about being remembered or being anything, the truth is we don't exist outside of the moment we are in right now, and we will die. And what impact will you have? Truly, the only thing that will stand a testament to your existence is the impact you have upon the earth itself, upon humanity itself. And that doesn't mean you have to be, Michelangelo or, Newton. Come up with something nobody has ever thought of before. But you have to be part of the larger whole. One domino leading to a better world. Doing what you can to make that better world. That's all you must do. That is our responsibility. Truly, if you're looking for meaning, you can find it no further. Thank you.